Got an internship opportunity for anyone that is really good at organization and staying on top of things and computer skills. If you go to pastorwithnoanswers.com, click on job, read the information. Hope to hear from some of you guys. And then lastly, want to let y'all know that I just want to, kind of thank the patrons of the Pastor with No Answers Patreon. And it's pretty cool. I just shared with them like all my favorite songs on iTunes, because now you like stream and digital stuff allows you to do so much. So anyway, if any of you are interested in supporting this podcast at a deeper level than just listening, do so by going to pastorwithnoanswers.com, and there's a place for you to check out some of our perks. But we appreciate all of you for listening and hope you enjoyed this Halloween edition Pastor with No Answers. All right, well, you are listening to the Pastor with No Answers, and we have a guest on today that I'm rather excited about. Dr. James and I, we've known each other for a while because he's been coming to the church that I pastor. Lots of interesting stuff that he could share, but what I'm going to want to do today is kind of hone in on a ghost story. Which I'm super excited about. But before we even get into ghosts, a lot of people think that's crazy talk off the top, and so they've already written you off as a madman. So let's go ahead and fix that and build a little credibility with our audience, because some people still won't buy a ghost story, but let's at least let them know that you're not a crazy person.
Well, thank you. And I grew up in Iowa and Nebraska, and we didn't believe in ghosts.
Yeah.
So this is something new when I moved to Charleston. But I grew up in the Midwest, born in Sioux City, Iowa. Grew up in kind of the Omaha, Nebraska area, Lincoln, Nebraska. Went to undergrad there, then went to dental school in Nebraska, and then went out to Portland, Oregon, and got finished my residency in oral and maxillofacial surgery.
Yep.
And then
so what kind of surgery did you say again?
It's oral and maxillofacial surgery.
And aren't you in your specialty TMJ?
I do a lot in TMJ, correct.
Yeah, gotcha.
And then I went back to medical school and got my medical degree at Creighton, and then did general surgery residency, and then did head, neck, ENT, and then did a fellowship in craniofacial and plastics at Harvard.
Yeah.
And then went into private practice, eventually became chairman at Oregon Health Science University.
Right.
And then went back into private practice in 2000, which I've been ever since.
Right.
And so, and I've really been able to cut my practice down because I've also developed, been co-founder of several technology companies.
Yeah.
And,
okay, so not only are you not mad, but you are also pretty smart.
Well, the brains, the only brains I have are the brains that my dad gave me and mom that said, hire really smart people.
There you go.
So we've been able to find, really through the Lord, geniuses that are strong Christians. So there are geniuses that are strong Christians that understand that God is the greatest engineer and the greatest scientist. And that, as I told a patient the other day, they said, you must be really smart. You have 2 doctorate degrees. I said, no, I'm pretty stupid. I said, what do you mean? I said, well, if you stay humble before Christ, you realize that every level of education that you go through, that the more you know, the more you don't know. There's just more questions.
Yeah.
And you realize you actually get smaller. The more you know, the smaller that you really realize that you are. Yeah. And that there's so much to know.
Yeah.
And that's the fun part of life, is to continue to learn and grow. And so that's all my life is. And when I gave my life to Christ 24/7, my only prayer really every day is that God will use me to His will to serve His kingdom. That's all I desire.
Yeah.
And He knows what we need and what we want.
Yeah.
And
so you came up to me Sunday and asked if I wanted to go to Greenville. What were you doing in Greenville?
So I had a U.S. congressman came to town and talked about our technology on Friday, and she said, how would you like to co-host President Trump coming to Greenville with Governor McMaster's? So a friend of ours actually said, I've got a private plane, let me fly up there. So we flew up on Monday, and unfortunately President Trump was more than an hour late, so we didn't get a lot of FaceTime. We did listen to a really nice talk he gave.
So you would have let me hop on that private jet with you?
I sure would have. I just couldn't quite get a hold of you. And then the governor came out, but I got to meet a lot of people with the state and talk about a lot of the things that we want to try to accomplish. Especially outreach with children and education, and one of the things I'm involved in with dance and art and music. So
very cool.
Yeah.
All right. So if I'm not mistaken, this house that we're going to be talking about, is it part of Rainbow Row?
No, it's actually, but it was a home on the water before the battery is built. So in 1690, we actually have a map from 1690 that shows that really.
I mean, you already have me at 1690. I'm so excited right now.
So this map, which is in our house, it actually shows that the land that our house sits on was a very small strip of land. It was called the Ferguson Farm. It was outside the walled city. So in 1690, there was a walled city.
Yeah.
The Atlantic Street, there was no battery. There's no battery park.
And just for reference for you non-Charlestonians, the battery is basically where the Charleston Harbor comes up on the main, I don't know, what would you call it? The main peninsula. I mean, where, and there's super nice houses. I mean, just extraordinary houses. Maybe a lot of people have seen some paintings of like storms coming up and washing in, but super nice part of town.
So the battery's built really, I believe it was in the 1800s. So prior to that, when our house, when the original carriage house that we have now was actually the Ferguson farmhouse. And then to get to our house in the walled city, Atlantic Street was an inlet of water, so there wasn't even a road there. Had to go over a bridge. The rest of the whole peninsula was a swamp.
Gosh, and you're still in 1690 right now?
So that's the 1690.
Yeah.
All a swamp.
Yeah.
Okay.
Gotcha.
So then the Fenwicks decided they wanted to move to Charleston, and because they were British royalty, the Charlestonians said, well, no, you're British royalty. You can't build inside the walled city.
Yeah.
So they bought the little Ferguson farm, and they built these three houses together for security, in which our house is the middle house.
Okay.
And that was built in the early 1700s and then repaired later on in the 1700s after earthquakes and fires and things like that.
Right.
So then we purchased the house in 2004. I brought historians in and archaeologists and said, tell us what we need to do to take it back to the original everything.
Yeah.
So we literally took out 104 dumpsters of stuff they had added over 300 some years.
Like construction stuff?
Yeah, everything from old carpeting to false walls and false ceilings. What they did is they actually put false ceilings in to protect the regular ceilings.
Gotcha.
From during the war, and the lighting and everything. Then they would put false walls in to protect the the fireplaces and whatever. So we tore all that out, and every time the builder would call me, he said, "You won't believe what we found today," and they kept finding these beautiful treasures behind these false walls.
Like what?
Well, they found in the carriage house a walk-in, basically a place where they would cook over a big pot. They would hang the pot. But you actually could walk in, it was so tall, and it had a brick bread oven next to it that was covered by moldy sheetrock.
Gosh.
And he just kept finding this stuff. So we just kept restoring it. Then they said, oh, by the way, we just realized, the historian said, you all have a 5-story atrium in the middle of your house. They designed back in the 1600s, so light would pour through, and they have balconies, and you had a tunnel through your house where the horses were kept in the back. Ours was the middle house. So they would go out to war. They would actually go through a tunnel through the house.
Yeah.
And all the people could overlook the balcony. The mom and the kids could watch Dad go out to war and come back through this tunnel that went through the house.
Right.
So we tore all that out and restored it all, found the beams, outlined it, and had Philip Simmons students, do the iron work and build the balconies, and so it was a lot of fun restoring it. But one night, we didn't have power at first, and the person that had lived there 15 years prior, in other words, the house was empty for 15 years, was a very interesting lady. She was actually the right-hand woman of Charles de Gaulle during the war.
Wow.
But she was also a spy for Churchill.
Really?
Yes, and very interesting lady, and she was also an artist. So
this is 15 years before 2004?
That's correct.
Okay, gotcha.
So it had been empty for 15 years in the family estate. Son lived in New York. So she actually had, the walls were filled full of art. I didn't know how well known she was, but it ends up that she was pretty famous in Europe. Matter of fact, 2 of her paintings that he allowed us to pick 6, 2 of them we found on the back were certificates that it hung in the Louvre in Paris.
Right.
And so, anyway, so after he cleaned everything out, we had a builder who was a very down-to-earth, very nice guy, and quiet guy. And he called me one night and he said, Dr. Yanney, I am never coming down here at night ever again. And I said, why, Ryan? He said, that huge mirror that is like built into your wall, there's somebody behind it. And I said, what do you mean, Ryan? He said, well, I was walking out, I heard this woman's voice. She said her name was Rebecca. Please help me. And I looked over, and there was a finger writing backwards in the mirror, please help me.
So this Ryan is a trustworthy person, someone you know?
Very trustworthy.
Yeah.
I've known him for years. Very humble, quiet man.
Yeah.
High integrity, and he was scared to death.
Yeah. So she said, please help me, and then she wrote?
She was writing, as she was saying, she was writing, please help me, in the mirror backwards.
Gosh.
From inside the mirror.
Did you believe him at first?
Well, the only reason I believed him was because it was him.
Right.
I mean, he had no reason to lie.
Right.
And I could tell he was scared to death by his voice. And so, of course, we went down the next day, brought our minister down, who was not you at the time, Joe. I'm really sorry. That was in 2000.
I would have loved it.
2005. And we had these, several guys. It was really difficult to get the mirror because it was built into the wall.
Yeah. Got
out of the wall. What happened was, because it was swamps, they would bury people in the walls.
What?
Because they couldn't bury them in the swamp. They would just float to the surface. They couldn't go out and dig in the swamp. So they would actually bury them in the walls. Matter of fact, people...
Were they embalmed? Because it seemed like that smell would start to get in the house.
They were, but I'm not sure if they used to embalm them.
Gotcha.
And everything that they embalmed them with was really deteriorated and filled with silt.
Yeah.
They said they used some sort of a protein-based balm oil back then.
Yeah.
And so when they took the mirror down, sure enough, there was an inset, and here was this, skeleton there. And so through research, the historians that were researching and actually written a book about our house found out it was Rebecca. She was 15 years old and died of malaria, and they buried her in the wall. So the minister blessed her and prayed over her, and he went through the whole house praying and anointing each room.
So do y'all know who Rebecca is?
Yes.
I may have missed that.
Yeah, so Rebecca was a Fenwick.
She was the famous one with all the paintings and everything?
No.
Okay.
No. This was a child of the Fenwicks.
Okay,
back
gotcha.
in when they bought the house,
Gotcha.
or built the house.
Gotcha.
So they after that, we put the mirror back, didn't touch the bone, sealed it back again, and never heard from Rebecca again.
Yeah.
So then we noticed.
So you helped her.
We helped her.
She just needed a prayer.
She needed a prayer to move on. So then, and this is from a Midwest guy who really
right
ghosts.
Right.
I didn't really believe they necessarily existed, although you hear about all kinds of stories, but I'd never experienced it.
Right.
My children would see things, but I wouldn't see them.
Right.
And so I was there one night, and we were digging under the kitchen for relics, which we find all kinds of little fun treasures. And we started hearing some major noise coming from the staircase that appeared to be towards the top of the house.
Yeah.
And it sounded like soldiers marching. And lo and behold, we realized in about 5 minutes, it is soldiers marching in our house. And we started thinking about, our house was on the front line of all those wars because there was no battery. So we're on Church Street. It's the last block of Church Street. And so our house is on the water.
Right.
Matter of fact, we found tunnels that one went to the gazebo in the park, and one went to the ocean where they could escape during the war.
Are you going to take me to your house? I'd love to see all
yeah.
this.
And then we found an original wall where it looked like there was a cannon turret. We rebuilt the wall under our house, and And now we have an anti-terrorism room down there that we've now built. It's kind of fun.
So y'all are all hearing soldiers marching?
Yes.
Like down the stairwell? Or?
No, just in one place, like
Gotcha.
in place. And we did find a lot of medicinal bottles and swords and guns and things in the yard, things that had been buried that we found that were, remnants from the war. We even found slave tags. And we found a youth slave tag, which they said is extremely rare. Found a lot of like mother of pearl test tubes for wine testing, silverware, china, other kinds of trinkets.
So this is how many people were hearing this at the same time? Just
Sherry and myself.
Okay.
Yes.
So 2 people.
And
heard
we had
thing.
not even had a glass of wine yet.
Right.
So.
No weed or anything.
No. I was one of those weedless guys growing up. I was one of these guys who always tried to please his parents, and I was always tried to be the good guy.
Yeah. Were y'all both? Did y'all both have like conversations like, "Are we really hearing this?"
We did. Yeah. And we just looked at each other and we were like stunned. At first, we were kind of afraid, and then we decided to leave, and then we decided this was like 10:30 at night, precisely.
Yeah.
So precisely 10:30 at night, every night this would occur for about a half an hour. So the people said, some people we talked to said, well...
Did y'all bring over more people to hear it? Or Hayes
we
or
did.
anybody?
The builder heard it. There was a couple of friends that heard it. And they told us, well, we were told that once you put the Wi-Fi in, that all that stuff would stop.
Yeah.
So, we weren't living there at the time. So when we moved in, we put the Wi-Fi in, and sure enough, it did stop.
Why? What's the
They think the
correlation
Wi-Fi
there?
might interfere with the electron cloud or whatever it is that's producing all this.
Okay.
And some sort of electrical interference with it. And but it didn't stop everything. So we still had 2 more ghosts that we encountered.
Yeah.
So once we
encounter?
Yes.
Gotcha.
So one of them above us, Ramsey, one of our daughters, was right above our bedroom.
Yeah.
And when we bought the house, I noticed that the closet door looked like it could have been a prison for soldiers during the war, because it had a cutout where there'd be maybe a little window and maybe bars or whatever,
Right.
and had been filled in. So sure enough, that first night, at 3:30 in the morning, we heard this loud crash, and then we heard like chains clanging as like somebody's being dragged across the floor with a ball and chain. So I ran upstairs. Ramsey was asleep, and her closet door was wide open.
She's how old-ish?
So she would have been about 12 at the time.
Okay.
Yeah. No, actually about 14. So then I said, well, okay. Tomorrow night, I'm going to shut the door, make sure I shut it when she goes to sleep, and I'm going to move her wooden chest in front of it. So I did.
Yeah.
3:30, same thing, ran upstairs. Wooden chest was moved, the door was open, and Ramsey was asleep. So this went on every single night at 3:30 in the morning. We just kept hearing it, and I mean, it was very clear to both my wife and I at the time, and we just eventually...
and Ramsey, who's your daughter, did she ever wake up?
Never woke up.
Wow.
Now, Ferris would wake up and come down and say, would you please tell the guy in my closet, which is the room across the hall, to quit bothering me and quit staring at me when I'm trying to go to sleep.
So the guy...
Another guy.
And this is a ghost.
Ghost.
And that's another daughter?
Another daughter, yeah.
Okay, so she's just fine with it being a ghost.
Yeah, they were used to, because actually a house before we lived on Colonial Lake, they were used to another ghost. Mr. Wagner was the ghost
How
there.
do you get used to ghosts? Oh, my gosh.
Well, because he realized they're not going to hurt you.
Right.
And when you talk to him, like Mr. Wagner seemed to respond to them. He would kind of hang out, and they would just tell him to go away. They were trying to study or whatever. And again, for some reason, adult or just me in person, I would never see him, but they were clearly seeing him. Or I'd come in where he would be spinning them on their chairs. They said, "Please tell him to quit spinning our chairs." And I'd tell him to stop, and the chairs would quit spinning. So I would see the actions.
Yeah,
it was very, very, very strange. So something about my children could see it, but I couldn't. So then we just got used to it. I think we just started sleeping through it. And then we had people that would stay in our carriage house. And everybody kept telling me, when we walk in the dining room, that we always feel this kind of this breeze. We feel there's somebody in there watching. And again, I couldn't see it. So this couple who rented our carriage house, their macho sons were coming to town. They said, we told them the stories of the ghosts, and they didn't believe it all. They said, right. that does not exist. We're from Michigan, and that never happens.
Yeah.
And so the next day they said, it happens. And we said, what did you experience? Well, to get to the carriage house, you walk through the tunnel. So they walk through the tunnel. We call it the Pirate's Tunnel because of these old pirate locks down there. And on the other side of the tunnel is the dining room windows facing their back, and they heard somebody tap on the windows. They turned and looked, and there was 2 women that were ghosts that were floating in the air that were tapping on the window, and they made some,
you could make a lot of money by charging admission.
Yeah. And so it scared them to death. And,
right.
And they swore they hadn't drank very much. So, and again, people do feel that.
Yeah.
In the house. So we've had the minister over several times, after that, and the next year praying and anointing and blessing the house.
Yeah.
And
so as a Christian, do you see this as angelic or demonic, or do you think that there is such thing as wandering spirits that are confused? Or
I think there are wandering spirits that may be stuck in the atmosphere. For example, when I was at the University of Nebraska undergraduate, we had a speaker from Stanford University, Connecticut, who was a nuclear physicist as well as a minister. And he started studying energy clouds, electron clouds, and he went out to grave sites, and he could tell you who just died the day before, because this very advanced electron camera he had created in his lab could show electron clouds floating above graves. And he was very accurate. He said because he theoretically thought that there was a transition time when we would go to heaven. In the church I grew up in, which is Greek Orthodox, in our church we believe that people transition over 40 days.
Yeah.
So it's a 40-day period until they actually go to heaven. That their
so
soul...
40-day ghost transition period.
It could be ghost.
Heck
yes.
yeah.
But these spirits their spirit or the soul gets stuck for some reason. And so... And he showed us all these electron clouds, and he would confirm that they had died within those 40 days. And so, that's one thought. I mean, I know my father passed away. We went to his home that night, and that's back in Iowa, and my uncle was upstairs. I was downstairs. And we heard noise. We saw lights go on and off, and he thought it was me. I thought it was him.
Yeah.
And then we said it must have been my father, because it was the same kind of pattern, how he walked and everything. And you just feel somebody's presence.
Right.
And, my brother at the time, my grandmother died. He said he and my cousin both, my grandmother visited him the day that she died, and they didn't know she had died. Nobody knew she had died.
Yeah.
And so and they called my mother at home and said, we think Grandma something must have happened to her, because she visited us in our classrooms, just kind of, and told us she loved us, and then kind of disappeared. So there's obviously we don't understand all that, exactly what happens, but I think that's why in the church, at least the church I grew up in, that's what they believed. So I guess one theory would be that they're stuck for some reason.
I mean, the first time I heard about your house, your son Hayes literally said it like it was just second nature to him. He was just like, and the ghosts, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, whoa, what did you just say? He's like, oh, there's ghosts in our house.
Yeah.
And I was like, you've got to tell me more. So this is such just a normal thing for you guys at this point, having been used to it for so long. I mean, is this something that, like, if you were to have me over for dinner and we stay up later talking, that it would reveal itself to people that don't live there, or how does that work?
Probably at 3:30 in the morning, you'd probably hear the ball and chain clanging.
So this is every night?
I honestly, I haven't woken lately.
Right.
Because I go to bed usually pretty late.
Right. So you still live there?
Yes.
Gotcha.
So I can't confirm it's still going on, because I think I sleep through it now, because you just goes. So when you realize it's not something to be fearful of.
Right.
So the only time I've ever been in a situation where there was fear was where I think it was demonic, on the Gree Street, on a Sunday afternoon, beautiful blue sky, people walking in the streets. All of a sudden I felt this darkness, and we looked to our left. We felt this oppression, and we looked to our left, and there was gargoyles and this old spooky brick mansion, big, huge home on the Gree Street. And it had pineapples on the gates. So we remember that. So we went back to Orange Street, where we lived at the time, and the people next door had grown up there, and it was the Morrisons. And we said, Marion Hagan, and said, Mary, do you know anything about this house on Legree Street? And it's got pineapples on the gates. Oh, the Pineapple Gate house. Yes, I grew up there.
No.
And she told us stories of very, very, very scary stories.
Yeah.
That drove her parents into alcoholism to the point where they couldn't sell the house. And they had to get out of there because it was every night. They wouldn't go above the second floor because the third and fourth floor were so haunted with very, very evil spirits that would attack them.
Right.
So they finally just left the grandparents. Since that time period, that house had a lot of evilness. There was a guy who was an artist from New York who bought it, who ended up being a Satan cultist priest and actually was not doing good things in the house.
Yeah.
And so what happened was they eventually a couple, when they arrested the guy and got rid of him, the house sat empty for many years. A couple came to town and put about $20 million, is what I was told, cleaned the house out of everything that could be possibly evil, kind of gutted the house, redid the whole yard, made it bright and beautiful, as a present to Charleston, because they've never lived there ever since. They just they got rid of all the satanic, everything, the drawings, everything, and had priests come in and pray over it, and try to exorcise it or whatever they were doing to rid it of evil spirits.
Yeah.
So I think there really is that presence in some places.
Now, the ghosts that are at your house, do they ever try to interact with you in a nice way? Because they're obviously not evil. They're not trying to hurt you or
for
scare
some
you.
reason, the ghosts that have been there, other than the ones that were floating in the dining room, who I've never seen, it's just kind of a repetitive thing. It's like they're stuck. Because I've never really felt like they've tried to reach out. I do think my daughter, Ferris, in her room, the guy coming out of the closet was maybe trying to reach out to her.
Mm-hmm.
But she's back there now temporarily in between jobs, and she hasn't really mentioned that she's seen it lately. So I do think that our minister coming in years ago and blessing the house and anointing each room and praying over each room probably made a big difference.
Yeah.
When we first moved to town, we were looking for a home, and I remember, and I didn't believe in ghosts, and I remember we looked at it. I was going to meet the realtor on Trad Street, and it was a home that had been empty for, again, he said, I think about 20 years, no electricity in the house. It was empty, and I thought he was there. The door was open, so I walked in, and no furniture, was barren. And I noticed that every step I took, there's somebody above me taking the same exact steps at the same pace. And this kind of went on. I yelled his name out and no response. I went in the kitchen. All of a sudden, I saw the lights flickering and the fan spinning. I think, I thought you told me there's no power in this house. So I was getting kind of a little concerned. So I went outside, and all of a sudden he pulled up. And I said, Chuck, I think there's somebody in this house. I mean, the fan is going, on. And
now, you said you called his name, like what?
No, I called his name Chuck.
Gotcha.
So the realtor's name was Chuck, so I called him Chuck.
Gotcha.
So then he arrived, and I told him what I experienced, and he said, "Oh, that's the Colonel."
Okay.
That's what you mean? Oh no, he's a ghost. He lives in the house, and he always gives people a hard time. But what'd you say about the kitchen? I said, well, the fan was going on and off, and the lights were flickering. He goes, no, that's impossible. There's no power to the house. And so he walked in, and he's talking to the Colonel. We get in the kitchen, and he saw the lights flickering, and his hair stood up, and he goes like, all right, he's super active. This is probably not a good time to be here.
Yeah.
So we left.
Wow.
I say, we're probably not interested in this house.
Yeah. So are you open about this, like, in the science community? I mean, you're very bright guy. You a science-minded guy. You work on people's bodies, for crying out loud. So you're not like just this mystic, pot-smoking, hippie guy that likes to fantasize about ghosts. Like, you're in the science community. If you opened up to, peers, would you get persecuted for it?
No. I tell him, I look at it, I said, anybody who's honest, as a physician, scientist, whatever you're involved in the science world, there's so much you don't know in that world. It's the same thing. I just said I don't necessarily understand it. And so they can accept that.
Yeah.
And I think most people, It's funny, it's amazing how people try to make it uneasy, or it's not appropriate to talk about your spiritual beliefs and your beliefs in God at the workplace or wherever. And I always tell people, I said, gosh, it's the most important thing in your life. Why wouldn't you talk about it? Mm-hmm. Why isn't it part of your dialogue and talking to patients or talking to people?
Right.
If that is the basis of your belief, or at least utilize what your belief system is and how you conduct your practice. I mean, I remember years ago, I ran into a cardiologist who went to my prior church, and in the airport in Atlanta, and I said, "Oh, where are you coming from?" He said, "I was at an ethics meeting for medicine." I said, "Oh, well, gosh, that's great. Then you must be really basing all your decisions on ethics and morals in medicine on biblical, wisdom." And he said, "No." And I said, "Well, why not?" And I know between right and wrong. I said, "Well, how do you know that? What's your reference point?" "Well," I said, "Isn't your reference point God's wisdom?"
Right.
And he said, "Well, yeah, maybe it is." I said, "So why is it so hard to discuss that?"
Yeah.
I said, I talk to people who claim they're not Christians. I say, "Well, gosh, just read Proverbs. Start with Proverbs. Let's talk about wisdom."
Right.
And see how it differs from the world's wisdom.
Yeah.
And most people I run into, when you really, I always tell people, I said, when I take the facade down, I said, there's no power in ego and status. There's only power in being humble and vulnerable to the truth before the Lord. Mm-hmm. So when I'm humble and vulnerable and tell the truth about my life,
right,
that no matter how much money you think I have or don't have, or what do you think I have or don't have, everybody has challenges in life every day.
Right.
And the more you try to do in life, the more challenges you're going to have. And so I think what God looks at is just how are you handling those challenges. And so when I make myself vulnerable before people and tell them, my life's not perfect, I have challenges, then the facade comes down, and it's amazing the people and the pain they're going through and the suffering.
Yeah.
And then by doing that, they're ready to receive the discussion. And I've seen that with people from all walks of life, where they just want to be real. And I've met people who said, "Gosh, how'd you get that out of my best friend I've known for 25 years? He's never told me those things about his life."
Right.
And you got out of him in 5 minutes. And I said it was about just being vulnerable to the truth and bringing down the facade.
Yeah.
There's a great book called The Millionaire Next Door that really talks about that.
Yeah.
And I think everything in life for me, it's been a growth, and I've seen it happen in my practice. I use my practice as a ministry, even surgeries. There's things that have happened in the operating room where I've made a covenant with the Lord, and He'll stop major blood vessels from bleeding in front of everybody's eyes, and people are just astonished. I said, "Well, God said the faith of mustard seed can move a mountain, so why are you astonished?" And I said, "It's not me. It's not about me. It's, the Lord wants us to seek purity, in our soul and everything that we do every day, 24/7, that we're always, the Bible says that, we're not good, but we should strive to be good."
Right.
So just striving every day. And so I try to armor myself with God's wisdom every morning at 5 a.m. And then just try to put that in my life. So about 30 years ago, I decided that, I'm not a halfway guy or a 99% guy. I'm a 100% guy. So I said, I want to read the Bible every year for the rest of my life.
Wow.
So I read through 30 years in a row, 365-day Bible. I read the Old Testament, New Testament, Psalms, and Proverbs every day. And so I know today I've read the same things the last 30 years.
Dang.
And then every year as I grow as a person, it actually means something different every year. And God opens my eyes more clearly. So now I feel like I'm Joshua standing there with 300 soldiers, and heaven's armies are coming ahead of me and wiping out hundreds of thousands of soldiers. You start to actually live it, and you realize that there's so much more to every word that God says, and you receive it differently when your life changes. And so that's why I'm always reading the Bible. And then I've got these interesting Bibles from the 1700s that they're big Bibles that the pages are quite large. The top 20% is scripture, and the bottom 80% is describing the derivation of every single word. So in those Bibles from the 1700s, it describes dinosaurs to a T.
Wow.
The beasts we talk about today in the Bible, with the tails like the cedars of Lebanon, they describe brontosauruses in these Bibles in the 1700s. They describe dragons with 2 chambers in their skulls that mixed gases to produce fire. And that, so it's much more descriptive in the Bibles from the 1700s before. That's why we know that dinosaurs aren't that old. Matter of fact, we do carbon dating, and this is where we could mix a lot of our belief system with scientists. So we have a lot of genius scientists that are very, very strong Christians, and we'll go to these evolution creation meetings. By the end of the meetings, the evolutionists will say, well, we have to have something to tell atheists.
Right.
And so we'll see, and we can show the facts. Like when you carbon date a mountain lion that died an hour ago, well, carbon dating says it died 45,000 years ago. So a lot of this stuff is really inaccurate. The geological crevices in between places like Cyprus and Turkey that are well known, well, they kept talking about how it took millions of years for those to actually develop. Well, there's a spot there where there's a tree that fossilized, 300-foot tree that fossilized across all those layers in 1 second. So we know that took 1 second to develop.
Wow.
But the tour guides have been telling people it took millions of years to develop.
Right.
So there's tremendous amount of
so are you new Earth, new universe sort of thing?
I mean, I think it's a few thousand years old. Yeah. I mean, I don't believe, for many reasons. I think because if you look factually, it doesn't back it. If you look even historically, it doesn't back it. And so, so I believe that at least life on Earth has only been around for a few thousand years.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And so.
Well, I appreciate your time, man.
Absolutely.
This has been awesome. So you and Hayes can be sitting there watching a movie, and window blinds go up and down. Y'all just look and then go back to the movie.
If it does occur, we would do that. Like I said, we get so used to it that the noises and things, we don't even flinch anymore.
Yeah.
Because we know it's not going to hurt us.
Right.
So it's amazing, kind of a fun house, a lot of history. That's why they have the ghost tours in Charleston, because there are a lot of ghosts.
Right.
There's been a lot
Do
of.
they know about your place?
We haven't let them come through. There's
Gotcha.
a lot of people. We actually had a group from a group called Afar. There was they're like Travel and Leisure and Condé Nast magazines. They did a ghost thing in our house. They brought people from around the country that they do more of an inside stay tour within cities.
Right.
And so they spent a day at our house.
Yeah.
But overall, we don't. We're not on the ghost tour.
Right.
But they said, because a lot of people died in Charleston, wars and feuds.
Oh, yeah.
Families killing each other from Piazza to Piazza, So I guess maybe that's why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So.
All right. Well, happy Halloween.